much does it cost you to sell a house in the metro Atlanta area? As I dig into this question, I'm going to focus on what it's going to cost you out of the proceeds of the sale when you go to sell your house. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to address the cost of repairs and doing updates to the house prior to selling. I cover that in some other videos. Instead, I'm going to talk to you about the costs you may encounter as you go to sell your house. But before we get into that, let's talk about something that we in the real estate industry call the net to seller sheet. When you're meeting with a real estate agent and considering hiring them to sell your house, they should offer to give you a net to seller sheet, a net to seller workbook, a net to seller worksheet. A net to seller sheet will take the price that you might expect to get when you sell the house and subtract out the different costs that we're going to cover in this video. If the real estate agent that you're interviewing to hire to sell your house doesn't offer to give you a net to seller sheet, ask them for it. And if they don't provide you with one, maybe you should hire a different agent. Okay, so here are the costs that you should expect to see on that net to seller worksheet. First, let's talk about mortgages and other liens. If you still have a mortgage on the house, that will likely be the highest cost to you. You have to pay off the mortgage. If there are any other loans that you received that use the house as collateral for those loans, those have to be paid off too. So for instance, if you have a mortgage, that has to be paid off. If you have a second mortgage, that has to be paid off. If you have a home equity line of credit or a HELOC, that has to be paid off. If you owe property taxes, those have to get paid. If you owe federal income tax and a tax lien has been put on your property, Uncle Sam's going to need to get that money. If you had work done on the house and you did not pay the vendor for that work, they can put a mechanic's lien on the property and that has to get paid. If you didn't pay your HOA dues or if there are fines that you haven't paid your HOA, they can put a lien against your property and those liens have to get paid off first as well. In the state of Georgia, the closing attorney is responsible for making sure that the property has clean title before it closes. That means they're going to look up and see what liens are against a property and make sure everybody gets paid at the closing table from the proceeds of the sale. The closing attorney represents the party bringing the money to the home sale. So if the person buying the house is getting a loan, they represent the lender, or if somebody's paying cash for the property, the closing attorney represents them. And the closing attorney wants to make sure they own the property free and clear. Next, let's talk about real estate compensation. I'm not going to get into the comparison about what the difference would look like if you sold your house yourself for sale by owner or using a real estate agent. I'm going to assume you have decided to hire a real estate agent. You've decided to hire them because you want their expertise, or because you know that they can negotiate better for you, or because you believe the deal will go more smoothly if you have a real estate agent working for you. Or maybe you've heard that data suggests that even after paying compensation to the real estate agent, that you will net more money from the sale of your home if you work with a real estate professional. So we're going with the assumption that you are paying real estate commissions. When we talk about real estate agent compensation, we need to talk about both the person that's representing you as a person selling the home and the real estate agent or brokerage that's representing the person buying the home. So we're going to divide those into two different conversations. First, let's talk about your agent, the listing agent. Real estate agents and or their brokerages determine what they will charge for their services. The majority of brokerages charge as a percentage of the sales price. Please understand that the compensation earned by a brokerage is not set by law and is 100% negotiable. That being said, that doesn't mean the brokerage has to negotiate. Agents and brokerages believe that their services are worth the compensation that they ask for. At the same time, there are agents and brokerages that will vary the amount of services they offer based on the percentage that the client wants to pay. What that means to you is if you don't want to pay the percentage that the agent is saying their compensation is worth, then you can negotiate with that agent to try to pay a different amount. Or you can be willing to accept less services for the amount you want to pay. But if they stand firm on their level of compensation and they're not willing to reduce the amount of services they offer for a lower compensation, then either you pay what they're asking for or you find a different agent. Fair enough? So that's the listing agent, the person that's representing you. Now let's talk about the buyer's brokerage. Whether or not you decide to pay the buyer's brokerage compensation is totally up to you. It is your choice. You can offer to pay no compensation to the buyer's brokerage. You can offer to pay whatever your real estate agent recommends that you pay, or somewhere in between. You can also wait to see what kind of offers you get and what kind of compensation those brokerages are asking you to pay. When I work with home sellers, I do recommend that they pay the buyer brokerage's compensation. One of the reasons why I recommend that sellers pay the buyer brokerage compensation is because I work with home buyers. I know how they think. If you as a home seller decide not to pay the buyer brokerage compensation, that means that the person buying the property has to come out of their pocket directly and pay their compensation to the buyer's brokerage. If the person buying the home is financing the purchase, that means they have to bring the down payment, the closing cost, and several $1,000s more to pay the buyer's brokerage compensation. And many home buyers don't have the money to pay it. And here's the thing, even home buyers that are paying cash for the property, some of them get very upset and don't like the fact that it can't be included in the price of the purchase. There are other reasons why offering buyer brokerage compensation I think is a good idea. I've worked both sides of transactions. I know the work that's involved, and having a good buyer's broker involved will help the whole process go more smoothly. But the pushback I see most often comes from the home buyers themselves. Now, some of you may be thinking, I think it comes from the agents. I bet the buyer's agents don't want to show the house because they know they're not going to get paid. I should hope not. That would be unethical. Based on my experience, it's the home buyers that are pushing back because either they can't afford it or they just don't believe it's the right thing to do. It's the home buyer that's willing to pass on the house. Again, that's my personal experience. I don't have mounds of data or know of any research that validates it one way or the other. The bottom line is that you, as the person selling the home, it is your choice on whether or not you decide to offer buyer brokerage compensation. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, Kelly, you talked about percentages. What percentage of compensation should I expect to pay? What percentage should I expect to pay my agent? What percentage should I expect to pay the buyer's brokerage? I mentioned earlier that these amounts are not set by law. The other thing you need to know is it is illegal for multiple brokerages to collude to set prices. Maybe you remember covering the Sherman Act during social studies in high school. It is illegal to price fix. Talk to your local real estate agent. When I'm meeting with a prospective home seller, I share what my brokerage compensation is, and I also share what I recommend that they should offer as far as the buyer's brokerage compensation. Again, it's your choice. It's all negotiable. Your mileage may vary. One of the other costs you may be expected to pay is the home buyer's closing costs. This is going to vary by price point. This is going to vary by location. The agent you work with in your area should be able to tell you whether or not you should expect to pay some closing costs, and if so, about how much. You might be wondering, why would you be asked to pay any of the buyer's closing costs? If during the home inspection there are significant issues that are found, sometimes you'll be asked to make those repairs. Other times you'll be asked to provide closing cost to the home buyer. That way they'll have some more money available after the sale of the house, after closing, and they can make those repairs themselves. Or sometimes the home buyer just needs a little more money to make the deal work, and so they'll ask you for some closing costs. Some price points and some neighborhoods, particularly those that attract first-time home buyers, you can expect to pay closing costs. Older houses that may have some issues that the home seller wasn't aware of, you can expect to be asked for some closing costs. Again, your agent will have some data. They will be able to give you an idea about whether or not closing costs are likely to be asked for, and if they are asked for, what they might look like. Another closing cost you'll be expected to pay depends on the time of year when your house closes. In Georgia, counties send out the property tax bill at a certain time of the year, and then they actually collect those taxes later on in the year, a lot of times in the fall. When the house closes, you'll be expected to pay property taxes from January 1st through the end of whatever that closing date is. If the taxes haven't been paid yet, then you'll pay those taxes from the proceeds of the sale. On the flip side, if you've already paid the property taxes for the full year, then you'll get a credit back from the person that's buying the home for the dates from closing date through the end of the year. There are typically some attorney's fees that you will have to pay as the home seller. The amount of those fees varies from $100 or less to a few $100s. They vary based on the complexity of the sale and any special circumstances surrounding that sale. If you live in a subdivision with a homeowners association, you'll also have to pay for a homeowners association clearance letter, an HOA clearance letter. The cost we typically see is somewhere between $250 and $500. Sometimes you pay that fee up front. Other times the closing attorney will pay for it, and then you will reimburse them from the proceeds of the sale. The HOA letter will report whether or not you owe any dues, whether you have any outstanding fines that are still owed, or if you're free and clear, you don't owe anything to the HOA. Again, as a homeowner, you're responsible for paying that documentation. And speaking of HOAs, we also have to talk about HOA dues. Similar to property taxes, there's also a timing issue here, depending on when your HOA collects their dues. You'll be expected to pay a prorated amount from January 1st to the closing date. Or if you've already paid for whatever the term is, then you'll get a prorated amount back from the date of the closing date through whenever the end of the year is or whatever the payment period is. Another cost that you may incur is some utility payments. For some municipalities, you may have to pay for water or garbage or other utilities at the closing table, so that will come from the proceeds of the sale. The closing attorney will collect that money and pay the utility bill. Depending on the age of the home and the age of the systems, you may, as the home seller, want to offer a home warranty to the home buyer so they'll be more comfortable knowing that they won't have any big unexpected bills that first year they own the home. Or after the home inspection is done and the home buyer finds out the systems are older than they thought, then they might request that you pay for a home warranty as a way to give them a little more security after they buy the home, and it's a way to keep the deal together. So if you decide to offer a home warranty, or if one gets negotiated after the home inspection, you can expect that that money will come from the proceeds of the sale as well. The amount of home warranties can vary from $600 to $800. Again, it depends on the company. So those are the costs. That net to seller sheet will give you an idea about what all those costs add up to and what you can expect when you sell your house. I'm going to add one more little caveat here, and that's about capital gains. While capital gains are not paid from the proceeds of the sale, that is something that you might want to consider when you're selling the house. So there you have it. There's a summary of the different costs you could incur when you go to sell your house. And as a reminder, if you're in the North Metro Atlanta area, I'd love to be your real estate agent. Give me a call. Let's schedule some time to talk.